the old high school gymnasium, built in the 1930s with Project Works Administration money. People in charge of our school board didn't see this as worth saving. It's kind of a shame. This is the best constructed building in town, and contrary to popular opinion, it did have historical significance. But like many places in Lake Mills, it's gone by the wayside. I'm going to take you around today, show you a few of the factories and a few of the abandoned buildings in town. It didn't have to be that way. That are really hurting America with all this going on. This is just one example of our history going away. This would be an additional view of what remains of the old original high school gym. Pretty sad, no matter how you cut it. I'm going to pan on over here. This is our new middle school. Nothing special, tilt wall construction. Unfortunately, I can see it already. It will never have the historical significance of what remains of the old gym. Nor is it built near as well. We'll pan on around here. You see our high school football field. Almost every small town has one of these. What makes ours unique is it was built in the 30s in a swamp. It looks pretty good. Still used today by the boys. It's considered one of the finest football fields around just because of its historic nature. Next thing you know, they'll probably want to abandon it and put it in some old farm field on the outside of town. Times change. And once again, it's not always for the best. This would be stop number 2 on my tour of sadness. This building used to house a place called Planar. They made some sort of fancy electronic equipment. It wasn't that the building wasn't profitable. There used to be over 100 people employed here. It's just that the powers that be decided, well, a few more dollars could be made by shipping these jobs over to China. Now, I don't know if I can get a close-up of this or not. But now here's what the building is used for. If you can actually see this, the sun's right in my eyes, so it's a little bit hard to envision this, but there's a sign over there that says storage, RVs, pontoon boats, motorhomes, vehicles. Can't afford to have any jobs in this town, but yet there's enough people that can afford RVs, pontoons, motorhomes, etc. Pretty sad. This building was built in about 1990, so it's not like it's obsolete and used and totally out of date. It is actually a very, very nice building for a small factory. But ever since the people left it, it's been sitting empty. What I'm showing you now is a place called Tyranina Brewery. Now, it is up and running. It's a great little concern. It makes some of the tastiest microbrew beer you could ever desire to actually partake in. Now, the guy that owns this, I understand at one time he was pretty Republican. Now, I don't know this to be fact for certain, but a little while ago, with all the things that are happening in Wisconsin, and a particular law that affected his business negatively that was passed by the Republicans, well, he held a fundraiser here for Democrats. Imagine that. Maybe some people are starting to see the light. Hopefully this gentleman is one of them to realize that Democrats aren't out to get small business. But this gentleman does run a nice small little business, keeps things floating, makes a great beer, and does help contribute to our community. Many events occur out here, such as bike rides, runs, etc., that are beneficial to what goes on around here. So my kudos off to him for staying in Wisconsin and staying around here. One of my favorite terms that I've heard recently is called military Keynesianism. Pretty much what that is that our government taxes are going to support the military-industrial complex, pretty much, and it's going to create some jobs, not as well as private industry would normally to help America, but regardless, some jobs are created. This is one of the beneficiaries of such a policy. Fiber domes. They not only make domes for silos, they make an item called Tuffy boats, they make just about anything that you could imagine out of fiberglass. But one of their large contracts happens to be with Oshkosh Truck. Oshkosh Truck makes Hummers. Hummers require fiberglass bodies. This company makes them. They're benefiting greatly from that. Now, I do know that they don't pay their people very well here, which is kind of sad unto itself, but at least they're employing local folks. What you're seeing now was at one time the feast de resistance of employment in Lake Mills. Probably not only in Lake Mills, but in all of Jefferson County. sitting empty. It's a concern that is called Krapako. Years ago, it was started by some local boys, about 1900 there and about, I don't remember exactly or don't know exactly. And they made stainless steel tanks and equipment for the dairy and the food industry. They were always profitable, always, always, always. But like with many companies like this, it's sold and sold and sold. Assets are stripped off, production is moved to other places, perhaps moved overseas. That's totally what happened to this institution. This is the second building that they built in town, and later on I'll show you the first building. Now what's sad about this situation is between this building and the other original factory, well over 1,000 people at one time were employed within their walls. Now it sits empty. Used to be a good union employer too, I may add. Paid some of the finest wages around, good company retirement benefits. Many people worked here, made Lake Mills a very thriving community. No longer. This would be the back side of Krapako. As you can see, it's a pretty large building. At one time, this road that's right in front of me used to be about where the railroad tracks ran. They were taken out about 20 years ago or so. Krapako still was in business at the time, and they still shipped out trucks with used large trucks to ship what they needed. But the loss of the rail line was one of the things that probably spelled the doom of this institution, of this place. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the bigger stuff out the door anymore. Now I'm going to pan over here to another business before we go on to the old Krapako. It's called Vision Fitness. Pretty nice little building, actually. Funny thing is, it was built less than 10 years ago. I don't know how this video is going to actually turn out because of the silly old sun. We shall wait and see. But Vision Fitness now sits empty. The gentlemen, the couple people that started this were actually employees of Trek Bicycle, and I know we've all heard of that. That's just about 10 miles away from here in Waterloo. Now, these guys did the exercise equipment and made some pretty decent treadmills, ellipticals, weightlifting equipment, etc. Now, this isn't where it was made. Obviously, most of their stuff is made in China, but this is where their headquarters were, and they employed a fair amount of people here locally. With the downturn in the economy in '08, thank you, Mr. Bush, by the way, people, don't forget that, please. Their jobs didn't exactly go away, but there was 3 divisions of this, and they consolidated into one to cut costs, and they moved their production, or pardon me, their shipping and receiving and design about 20 miles from here. Regardless, this building is now sitting empty except on Sundays, where one of the local churches uses it for their services. At least it's getting some use, but it would be a beautiful building for a factory. But as it is right now, it sits totally empty. Well, this is the back side of Krapako. What I'm trying to focus in on now was the old entryway for the employees. Human Resources cafeteria was through this. Believe it or not, in about '75, I actually worked here as a work-study through our high school as a draftsman. Loved the job, spent the better part of a year doing it, got paid upwards of $2 an hour. Big bucks back in 1975, especially for a high school student. In fact, my brother worked here when the construction trade hit a downturn in the late 70s, early 80s, when there were still factory jobs available and construction wasn't going on. My mother was plant nurse here, believe it or not, up till the time that she retired. She was plant nurse in the one that I'm going to show you later on too, back in the 60s. Now, this is all that remains of Krapako. I'm going to pan on over here to what the land they used to own, and you'll see it is nothing more than a mini industrial park. There's a concrete place, there's a drywall place, there's all these little mini places where there might be 3 or 4 people employed doing gosh knows what. So there's really not a whole awful lot going on in this industrial park. Now I'm going to pan on over this way. I'm not going to go over there to take a shot of it, but you will notice there's a factory in the distance. It's a specialty machine shop. There's actually a couple of them. One is Aslan Engineering and one is Seljan Tool and Die. Now, they do employ a few people. I don't know how many, maybe up to 100 persons in each place or whatever, but Nothing like what it used to be. Now this is the first of many views that I'm going to show you of our old abandoned Krepaco factory. Actually, it's not truly abandoned. It's used as an incubator for small businesses, and also there's like landscaper back here, small construction outfits, small plastic outfits, trailer builder. Nothing like it used to be. There used to be a foundry housed in here, but this is where my mother worked in the early 60s. Many people in Lake Mills worked here. It was up and running probably till about 1985 when they shut it down and moved all their operations over to the big plant that I showed you that was closed. But this is Krepaco, quite an operation for many, many years, and helped make Lake Mills what it is today. Here's the backside of Krepaco. If you look close enough, you'll probably be able to see that there used to be more building. This was all building where I'm looking at right now. All tore down. And at one time, tied over to this building. It was quite a concern at one time. Made many, many, many things that helped make America what it is today. And all the people that did this, dead and gone. Sad part is, jobs are gone too. The other sad part is, I often dwell on this, is many, many years ago after World War II, when the men came back, they took care of each other. The people that rose to be the CEOs were the same ones fighting in the trenches with the guys now working on the factory lines. They took it as a shared responsibility to make America great. I don't see that anymore now. I see people living in glass houses, not really caring what happens to us. Taking their money and running, and not really seeing what's happening to their brethren and their sisters that are actually working for them, not being able to make ends meet. America's out of skew. We're going to have to change this back if we're going to survive. One more abandoned factory on our tour. This is the old canning factory. Now I can't say, and I'm 54 years old, that I remember when this was actually used, but I can say that it is sad that it is now gone. But regardless, it's a cool old canning factory used for World War II prisoners many, many, many years ago. This is grand and glorious Rock Lake, Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Happens to be a spring-fed lake, happens to be pretty clean. It also happens to be one of the things that keeps Lake Mills viable as a community. It, along with being on the interstate between Madison and Milwaukee, make this a very desirable location. Part of the lake I'm looking at right now, if you bought an old dilapidated house over there, you'd probably be paying a minimum of $500,000 to $750,000 for the lot. Depends where you're at. As I pan around, that particular part of the lake I'm pointing at right now, far side of our 640 or 680 acre lake, you're looking at least $1 million for a tear down to build a new house. Once again, F. Scott Fitzgerald. They're rich, they're different than you and I. People that live along the lake right here quite often seem to live in glass houses and ignore what's going on around them. Economy, healthcare, jobs, etc. And feel as though people ought to be able to survive on $10, $12, $13 an hour. Why not? Why not should both people work to be able to survive and procure the American dream? And this is coming from people that are willing to pay people $12 or $13 an hour and say, hey, that's enough. Well, I can't quite see how that's enough, and I can't quite see how our world would be better when all the unions go away. I kind of like my vacations, my health care, my pensions. I kind of like these things. I kind of like my working safety conditions. I just can't imagine in my wildest imagination that if we eliminated unions and these things went away, our America would be a better place. But maybe I'm wrong. Don't think so.